for the Senate Banking Committee and the House Financial Services Committee from last week. We submitted a petition, got a
First of all, Brother Browder, what would you prefer? Professor Browder, Dr. Browder, Brother Browder?
Tony.
Tony.
Tony School.
All right, good morning, Tony. How are you?
I'm fine, brother.
It's a pleasure to be here in your home. It is so beautiful, so comfortable that doing this interview is a sheer pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
As you know, we're doing this piece on the history of the Black Studies Department. Why and how it came about. What was the need for Black Studies in the beginning anyway? So I'd like to open up with you giving us your insight in terms of why the Black Studies Departments came about in the beginning. What was the need for them?
Sure. Well, speaking from my personal experiences, growing up in Chicago in the 1960s, and then coming to Washington, D.C. to attend Howard University in the 1970s. I never took any Black Studies classes, none whatsoever. And as a result, after I graduated from Howard, I felt that there was a tremendous void in my understanding of who I was as a person of African ancestry. So after college, my real education began. I began to pursue an interest in Black Studies. And it began first with my going to hear Dr. Ivan Van Sertima when he was in town to promote his new book, They Came Before Columbus. And shortly after meeting Van Sertima, I heard of Dr. Ben for the first time. So meeting those two brothers within 6 months of each other made me aware that there was a wealth of information that had been excluded from my education as a person of African ancestry, even though I had attended predominantly Black schools all of my life. And that prompted me to begin my investigation of who I was as a person of African ancestry. And as I began to gain more knowledge of self and met scholars who were in the forefront of that movement, I became aware of Dr. John Henry Clark and others who were instrumental in the Black Studies movement. And their purposes for initiating that movement were essentially the same of my interest in self-study, and that is the educational institutions that we pay our taxes to have consistently minimized our presence in world history, African history, and American history. So there has been a need for us to learn more about ourselves, and that need has basically come through the work of independent brothers and sisters who saw a void, who understood the power of knowledge of African and African-American history and culture, and saw to it that information was available at various levels so that it could fuel not just African children, but all children with a greater awareness and appreciation for the contributions of African people to world history and culture, not just African history or American history and culture. So the movement that Dr. Clark played a pivotal role in spearheading is one that has favorably influenced the thinking of millions of people over the last almost 50 years now, 40 years now. And so while I was on the outside of that movement, knew very little about it in my early years, I've been a beneficiary of the movement because of my involvement with many of the scholars who were involved, as well as interacting now with young adults who have been the beneficiary of attending HBCUs and even high schools that had courses in Black Studies. And as a consequence, they now have a greater understanding of their history and culture at an earlier age than many of us did. And they're beginning to take this mantle or this matter of responsibility of African history and culture even further because of the transformative power of an introduction to knowledge itself at an early age, how that influenced them, and they are seeing to it that others are also exposed to this information. And it's my goal that that this effort continues, and it has to continue because, as we know from the effects of the African-centered movement in the late 80s and early 90s, there's been a concerted effort on the part of many in this country to diminish Black studies and African studies. And right now, as we speak, in 2010, we see that the state of Texas is initiating efforts to write certain aspects of African history out of the history books. Mississippi is about to do the same thing. So as we move into this age of post-racial America, we're finding that racists are reasserting their right to tell our story. And as a consequence, as that is happening, we are being erased from the respectable commentary of human history, as Dr. Clark often said. So this battle is far from over, and we have to continue to fight for the basic right to tell our story and to teach our story to all children in the classroom so that we can assume our rightful place in world history.
Tony, why is this, why is the creators of Nile Valley civilization, or African, or Egyptian history, why is that such so contested? Why is this war so hot over who are the creators of Nile Valley civilization?
Sure. Well, as Dr. Jeffrey said many years ago, and has repeated on numerous occasions, whoever controls the Nile Valley stands at the head of human accomplishments. Nile Valley civilization, we now know beyond a shadow of a doubt, is the oldest documented civilization on this planet. There have been others who contested whether or not Nile Valley civilization came first or Mesopotamian civilization came first, and that debate is going back and forth over the last century or so. But essentially what I've found is that this attempt to assert Mesopotamia ahead of Kemet was an effort that was made to minimize the significance of Nile Valley culture and civilization. But in reality, we know that Mesopotamian culture and civilization was not a true culture in the literal sense of the word. They had cuneiform writing, which is just hash marks that really is not a language, is not a sentence structure, as Medu Neter is. There has been a great deal of excavation in Mesopotamia, but none of those excavations have yielded the quality or the quantity of artifacts that Nile Valley civilization has. So I think the issue can be settled once and for all that Nile Valley civilization is the oldest documented civilization and has the greatest wealth of evidence to validate it as the beginning of culture and civilization. As a matter of fact, in recent years, there has been research done in Upper Kemet to show that Ta Seti is the oldest documented city known to man. And as more archaeologists are doing research, we're finding more and more documents to indicate that the development of culture probably began south of Kemet in what is now modern-day Sudan, and preceded the development of Kemet by hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. So I'm quite certain that as more scholars begin to do excavations south of Kemet, they'll find more evidence to substantiate the southern origins of Kemetic culture and civilization. And so it's another reason why we need to have more culturally grounded scholars who are introduced to this information at an early age so that they can begin to advance the research and become the next generations of Obingas and Diops and Jokanas and Clarks. And I'm very hopeful that within the next 50 years, our understanding of Nile Valley culture and civilization will change dramatically as a result of new excavations that will be undertaken.
When we say Nile Valley civilization, what geographical land area are we talking about, and who are we talking about?
Well, when we talk about Nile Valley civilization, we're talking about the Nile River is the longest river in the world, flows from south to north, has its origins in Central East Africa, from the tributaries of the White Nile, which comes out at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro, and the Blue Nile comes out of the Rwenzori Mountains in Ethiopia. So we're talking about a region in Africa that extends over 4,000 miles, and that we know that early man used rivers as a means of navigation. It was the most convenient means of transportation, moving from one part of the land to the other. And since the river flows from south to north, then that migration pattern was from southeastern Africa, Uganda and Kenya, down north through Sudan into Kemet, and also out of Ethiopia into Sudan and into Kemet, and then continued all the way through Kemet or Egypt into the Mediterranean Sea. So it was a natural cultural highway, as Dr. Clark used to say. And these, we're talking about indigenous African people who were the first human beings to walk on this planet. And recently they have discovered the skeletal remains of an African woman found in East Africa, skeletal remains that have been dated to, I believe, 4.1 million years old. So the oldest skeletal remains that paleontologists are discovering have only been found in Africa, and it seems that each decade or so they're finding new skeletal remains that pushes back the beginning of humanity by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And so we can expect within our lifetime, over the course of the next 2 to 5 decades, we can expect to find new archaeological finds that will push the beginning of humanity further back, and we'll find that those humans, early humans, have only been found in Africa. And I'm of the mindset that we will also find evidence of earlier civilizations, probably still in this Nile Valley region, but earlier civilizations which predate Taseti and Kemet. So I'm very hopeful that our perception of world history and culture will change dramatically, again, as more people of African ancestry begin to receive the education that gives them the skills to be able to do the research, and hopefully they'll be in a better position to receive funds from African Americans who will help to finance that research, which will guarantee that it will be published.
Well, would, we're talking about Nile Valley civilization, which spans a distance of at least 4,000 miles.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at what is now Israel and what they're calling the Middle East, Mesopotamia, and that whole area, would not that have been in ancient times African people as well?
Oh, sure. We can say for a fact that prior to the creation of the Suez Canal in the 19th century, that what is now the so-called Middle East and the Saudi Arabia Peninsula was once a part of the continent of Africa. It still is Africa. Despite the creation of the term Middle East, which I understand was created by a British reporter in the early 20th century. It was a geopolitical term that was used to separate specifically the inhabitants of Northeast Africa, who we now call Egyptians, from the continent of Africa. So those people have been relegated to this nebulous place called the Middle East. And every time I hear that term, it angers me, because there is no such place as the Middle West, the Middle North, the Middle South. So it was a term that was conveniently created in order to separate African people from that specific landmass and the history and politics of that landmass. So we can say without a doubt that the area now known as Palestine and Israel and Jerusalem, and going further north east into what is now known as Iraq, those lands were, Turkey as well, yes, those lands were inhabited by people who we would classify today as Africans. But because of geopolitics, African people have been written out of their own history wherever they have been. It's interesting in that in the 7 years that this country has been involved in the war in Iraq, I've read numerous articles about Africans who live in Iraq, Africans who live in Baghdad. Although many of them were brought there to be the servants of Arabs, were enslaved, there is also a great deal of evidence which indicates that Africans lived in that region of Iraq before the arrival of so-called Arab-speaking people. And again, this history is in museums, it is in libraries, it is a history that is not commonly shared because of the desire to minimize and to localize the presence and the contributions of African people to race